Hi. So for Valentine's, I suggested an exercise that people could do rather than to look for validation outside of ourselves, to write a Valentine's love letter to ourselves, or to a part of ourselves that we felt needed appreciation and validation. And in doing the exercise myself, something quite interesting happened. And I wanted to reflect a little bit on that, and on some of the feedback that came back from people who also tried the exercise. It was interesting how it brought stuff up for people as much as it did kind of giving them the opportunity to love a part of ourselves. I noticed that with allowing a part of myself to come up, I actually connected with how she felt at the time. And I found that the strategies that I adopted at that time, it was a 14-year-old version of myself. The strategies that I had adopted at that time kind of came more to the forefront in some problems that I was having during the following week. And I could see that 14-year-old self really in me. So I wanted to reflect on what was happening and how I managed that and how I handled that as that was happening. So there's two sort of things. I want to talk about being in the present moment, but I want to also talk about what happens to help us survive and how we develop strategies. So we hardwire information into our field, into our energy, so that we can have our go-to strategies, the strategies that are the first thing to adopt when we sense a potential danger. And the danger, of course, can be even just feeling separate from other people, because as social animals and social beings, it's important for us to be connected with other people. That's a safety issue. So the 13-year-old, 14-year-old self felt very alone, very misunderstood, very misjudged in particular, kind of felt she was being judged negatively and incorrectly, and she felt very isolated and very, very angry as a result. Okay, this is an anger kind of is an assertive, it asserts us to respond. But of course, like any emotion, if it's not processed, it can become detrimental and it can become a problem. And she was building a lot of anger and rageful anger, this ongoing feeling of not feeling that she was understood or validated, or that her position or her opinion or who she was being validated. Now we hardwire information for survival purposes in a number of ways. When up to 6 years old, we're in a different brainwave state, so we can hardwire information into our subconscious and into our field a lot quicker, and we can access that. So it is, when I say hardwired, what I mean is the neural pathways that connect us to that information are a bit like the path more often trod. So it kind of becomes, the neural pathways become a lot stronger. And they are our go-to information. So we can also hardwire information and hardwire strategies in a trauma, because if we have a traumatic experience, a threat to our survival, it becomes imperative that that information is immediately accessible to me as my go-to. It's the first thing I've got to do is survive before I can do anything else. So that's why we do this in the first 6 years of our life, it has to be where we download that basic information of what is safe and what is not safe. So we hardwire information a lot quicker pre-6 years old about what is true and not true, what is safe and not safe. And also when we have a traumatic experience. And of course the third way, main way that we hardwire information is by practicing in habit. So something becomes habitual and it goes into the subconscious mind, and it becomes the go-to without having to consciously be aware of it. So learning to drive a car, learning to walk, all these things are in a different part of our brain now, and they're hardwired into our thinking. So we have these strategies, as I say, we can develop them in a point of trauma, and Dr. Robert Scare refers to these as trauma capsules. We encapsulate all the information at that moment that is potentially dangerous to us. So when we then, after that moment, when we then experience something that is potentially a repeat of that event or potentially dangerous to us, that is why we have that as the hardwired go-to way, strategy of dealing with this. And that's why these things are very hard to change. So if you're trying to change, I don't know, your eating habits, for example, or something that has become habitual, that's why it's very, very difficult. It's the go-to strategy, and it's become the hardwired, the most used and most adopted method of dealing with a particular situation. And by situation, we may mean a contextual situation. It may be an emotional response, an emotional situation. So it can be an external situation or an internal situation. So what I found after doing the exercise and allowing this 13, 14-year-old self to come forward, and it being her that I wrote the letter to tell her she was loved and validated, and to reconnect with her, I found that I allowed some of that strategy to come up. Now, I've done a lot of work on my anger and my aggression, but there is still triggers there. We all have triggers. We're all a work in progress. So what I noticed that was going on, we had a week or a couple of weeks of some issues, let's say some territorial issues, some issues about our home, and needing to sort some things out. And I noticed that I was feeling those feelings, those deep sense of anger, and I felt unable to defend myself, which was another aspect of this for me at that age. And I just noticed a lot of that 13, 14-year-old self coming forward. Now, this happens to us all the time. I might not have noticed it had I not done that exercise myself. I might not have been as aware that I had connected with that particular part, that particular strategy. And what I do now is I teach people to, rather than try to change that, we try to understand it instead. So rather than say, well, I don't like being rageful, I don't want to feel angry, I don't want to behave like that, I don't want to be the way I was then. I was very nasty around that age, because one of the ways in which rage and anger, if you're holding on and suppressing it and don't have a way to deal with it, one of the things is, I became very sarcastic, very nasty, very defensive, but very much on the attack to be defensive. So, it's not a way I want to be anymore. It's not the strategy I want to adopt anymore. And of course, as therapists, people tend to come to us because they have a behaviour or a symptom they want to change, they don't want. So we're in an away from movement. We dislike something about ourselves. And what I'm helping people to do more now is to say, okay, we might not like the results, but what we want to do is we want to differentiate between symptoms and results, triggers that trigger us into adopting strategies from before that are giving us those symptoms or results, and actually coming back from the trigger back to the original root cause. What is the original root cause, and therefore the purpose of this symptom or this particular response? What is this strategy? Why was it adopted? What did it do? And what is it doing now that maybe I don't have another strategy for at the moment? So I need to expand my awareness of this particular strategy and what was going on, appreciate myself for having adopted a strategy in the first place, having got me this far, because I'm here, so something's going right. Okay, something's been working with it. And if I can understand that strategy better, then I can appreciate where I'm at, that part of me that was doing that. Now, the basics of that are actually very, very powerful, because if I'm in an away from feeling, I'm actually in a sense of stress, and nobody is going to change a strategy and if they're in stress. Okay, we don't heal ourselves if we're in stress. We're creating cortisol. We're doing chemically. We're doing other things. I need to be out of danger, out of stress, out of my away from, into a sense of recovery, a sense of safety, and actually a sense of presence, in order to allow that shift and that chemical shift in my body into recuperation and into regeneration and into making DHEA and into actually being able to become healthy and return to health. So by observing rather than adopting that strategy or even judging myself, which again puts me into stress again, rather than being that away from, we need to become present so we can observe it and appreciate it. And the thing I teach people to do now is the ABC of heart conscious breathing. And the purpose of that is to become present. And I talk a lot now about the now state, being in the now state, which is actually an acronym for being the Neutral Observant Witness. I just want to witness where I am and observe it from a neutral point of just recognizing this is the reality of what's going on. I'm not back when I created that strategy. I'm actually not in the situation that I'm fearful that will repeat. I'm actually in the present moment. And in the present moment, if I can understand the strategy that I created, understand it on a deeper level, understand the other resources that maybe then weren't available to me, but that now are available to me, then I start to have a choice. So we're not trying to get rid of that thing we don't like. We're not trying to push it away. We're not hating it. We're not saying I want to stop doing that. We are actually starting to expand beyond it so that we see it for what it is, a strategy, a way of dealing with things. But we start to look at other options. And in doing so, I can actually start to have a choice. So we're taking ourselves to a choice point, where at that choice point we either choose to adopt that strategy or we choose something else. And sometimes it might be that being aggressive may be the best option and the best strategy. But the point is, I'm most often I'm going to choose a different strategy or one of a number of new strategies, a new way to be. But I'm not in a resourceful state and my mind doesn't work properly while I'm trying to get away from something. So if we cannot look at emotions even as positive emotions and negative emotions, emotions like emotions that are actually connected to creating cortisol, okay, so anger, sadness, rage, worry, those all actually create cortisol in the system as well as other chemicals. The way to look at that really is these are away from emotions. These are emotions that are to get me away from something. Whereas emotions like love and happiness and excitement and enthusiasm, those are emotions that take me towards something. It all comes back down to survival. Even our emotional state is our biofeedback. It is a feedback mechanism by which we can start to identify physical symptoms, mental states, and through our emotions, we are effectively always, as an animal, computing, if you like, and working out, do I need to get away from this? Do I need to go towards this? As a social being, love, empathy, connection, I'm connecting with other people. It's still about safety. It's about being in a social group. Okay, so we've got away from emotions and we've got towards emotions, both of which are designed to keep me safe, to keep me alive, to protect me and to look after me. So the way that I handled this 12, 13, 14-year-old self kind of becoming more to the forefront was to just observe what I was doing, observe how it changed my behaviour, observe how I felt and how I remember feeling that at the time, and just notice how that had kind of come and gone since then. We're talking quite a few years now, as it's just been my birthday this weekend and I was 45. We're talking a few years. So what is interesting was by being present and observing how I was re-adopting some of that emotional state, how I was re-experiencing some of that emotional energy, how that was in part asserting me. It was certainly giving me an aggressive energy that I could have used. But the thing about being angry is people think it's a good energy to action, to get you to do something. And the thing about anger is, because it's an away from emotion, because it's emotion that is I'm responding to actually to a sense of danger. I am in the hindbrain. I'm not in my full cortical facilitation. So I need to recognize the anger. I need to understand the anger, understand what's being triggered, and then when that anger is triggered, process it myself and understand where it's coming from, come back into a full state, okay, become present again, so that I have my resources to choose the best course of action. If I act from a point of anger, I'm actually acting from a survival part of my brain. And actually anger, unprocessed anger that is an immediate response, might save my life. Okay, it might be something that immediately saved my life. But in our modern society, it tends to mean that we kind of shoot off at the mouth, or we act and then we regret later because we weren't in control. And that's because it's a fight mechanism. It's part of the flight, fight, freeze mechanism, and it is part of the fight mechanism to assert myself, to protect myself. And the thing is, it's a do or die. It's not a resourceful state where I need to assert myself, but I want to win-win and I want to work best for the group. It is literally, I need to survive. And I need to survive at all costs. So I don't care what happens to you. I don't care if I hurt you, because it's a triggered response into a survival mechanism of do or die. So that's why we feel out of control. That's why anger in itself is not really the best course of action. What I really am better to do is to process it, understand it. And if I still need to assert myself, or I still need to maybe act angry or aggress over somebody to rebalance the group even, or to rebalance a relationship, then that's also, a possible course of action. But doing it from understanding that's what I'm doing is a different way of working. If we bring anger and the vibration of anger to the pot, we're kind of mixing up, and we're bringing a vibration that isn't helping. Whereas if we can still maybe act out of love, but maybe we have to assert ourselves, then that's a different way of responding. So I'm sort of talking about this in part retrospectively over how I handled some situation recently with this energy coming up, and choosing just to stay with it and observe it and be this now neutral observant witness, and grow from that understanding of where it was coming from, why it was there, and actually choose how to handle it. So I'm pleased to say that I didn't go and see the person I was upset with, scream and shout at them, throw back at them the something that the discussion would have been about. And I, over a few days, I have to say, managed to begin to see it differently. So really, I suppose what I'm saying is that it does sometimes take a little while to observe what's going on, but if we can understand the principle about survival and understand the principle of observing things from a more neutral standpoint, we can practice that. And that's really why I call what I do now, what I teach, conscious health practice. It's becoming consciously aware of how these things affect me and my health. They affect me physically, mentally, and emotionally, and how I can continue a daily practice of growth. I won't say self-improvement, because that is also kind of judging who I've been so far. So it's not really about self-improvement, it's about growth. And of course, growth happens when we come out of stress. We can't grow when we're in stress either. So it is about becoming present and witnessing what's going on. So I have something more to share about being in a relationship. That was the original aim of the previous blog, and I'm going to come on to that over the next 5 blogs to go with it, because there's 5 areas that I want to share with you. So I looked at what I'd been doing over the past 10 years, 11 years with my husband Vic, and how we had gone from a really, well, an initial amazing relationship with a wonderful sort of quite a long 2 or 3 kind of that honeymoon period of being in love, how some issues arose from both of our backgrounds and baggage, and then how things went horribly wrong and we had a very difficult time, and then how we came through that to have the incredible relationship that we have now, and we've been married 3 years. So the next sort of sequence of blogs on this theme will be the things that I've observed, that what we did to get to where we are. So I'd like to share that with you. So yeah, let's practice being the neutral observant witness, and there are already some recordings on how to do the ABC breathing. So A is attention to the heart area. B is to begin to breathe in and out of the heart area, just regulating the breathing. And by regulating the in and out breath, what we're doing is we're actually regulating the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system and regulating the vagal nerve, and that starts to put the heart into coherence. And when the heart starts to talk to the brain and send new information, we start to get our brain back, so we start to come out of the stress response. So we begin to breathe and regulate in and out of the heart. And then step C is to connect with the feeling of appreciation, even if that is just a sense of appreciating the fact that we have this breathing technique. Okay, it doesn't have to be complicated. We just go into the heart and we appreciate that we have something as simple as the breathing, or we can think about people and things that we care about. So in doing that, that allows us to become present, and that allows us to then become that neutral observant witness of what's going on. Okay, so if you've got any questions, please do either put a message at the bottom or email, and share your experiences. I would love to hear how you're getting on with that, and perhaps we'll do a webinar soon about becoming the witness, and maybe do a bit of practice together. Okay, so good luck with that.